When mob boss Anthony the Hammer Benedetto threatened Elvis Presley over a refused Vegas contract in 1973, Dean Martin did something so unthinkable that it shocked the entire Las Vegas underworld and created a legend that would be whispered about in back rooms for decades, proving that some friendships are worth risking everything for, and that true loyalty sometimes requires actions so bold they redefine what courage actually means. It was Thursday evening, August 23, 1973, and Dean Martin was having dinner with Elvis Presley at the International Hotel's private dining room when Elvis received a phone call that would change everything. The two entertainers had been discussing Elvis's upcoming concert series and Dean's plans for his next television special when Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, interrupted them with urgent news that couldn't wait. "Elvis, we have a serious problem," Colonel Parker said, his usually calm demeanor replaced by obvious anxiety. "Anthony Benedetto has been calling all afternoon. He wants to meet with you tonight about the Riviera contract situation." Dean saw Elvis's face immediately pale at the mention of Benedetto's name. Anthony the Hammer Benedetto was one of the most feared organized crime figures in Las Vegas, known for his violent enforcement of business agreements and his connections to casino operations throughout the city. Elvis had recently turned down a lucrative contract to perform at the Riviera Hotel, choosing instead to honor his existing agreement with the International Hotel. The decision had been purely professional. Elvis preferred the International's facilities and had better relationships with their management. But Anthony Benedetto had significant financial interests in the Riviera and had taken Elvis's refusal as a personal insult. "What kind of meeting?" Dean asked Colonel Parker, understanding that mob figures like Benedetto didn't typically request social visits with entertainers. "The kind where saying no isn't really an option," Colonel Parker replied grimly. "Benedetto has made it clear that Elvis's refusal to perform at the Riviera has cost him substantial money, and he expects Elvis to make it right." Dean knew enough about Las Vegas's power structure to understand that Elvis was facing a dangerous situation. Benedetto had a reputation for using violence to resolve business disputes, and entertainers who crossed him often found their careers destroyed or worse. Elvis had been struggling with prescription drug dependency and was in no condition to handle the stress of a confrontation with organized crime figures. Dean could see that his friend was terrified, but trying to maintain his composure in front of Colonel Parker and the hotel staff. "Elvis, let me handle this," Dean said quietly. "You don't need to deal with Benedetto directly." Elvis started to protest, but Dean interrupted him with the kind of firm authority that reminded everyone why Dean was considered one of the most respected figures in Las Vegas entertainment circles. "Elvis, trust me on this. I know how to talk to people like Benedetto, and I know how to resolve this situation without anyone getting hurt." What Dean didn't tell Elvis was that he had already formulated a plan that was so audacious and unprecedented that it would either solve Elvis's problem permanently or destroy both their careers and possibly their lives. Dean arranged to meet with Anthony Benedetto that same evening at the Sands Hotel, in a private dining room where they could speak without interruption or surveillance. Dean understood that he was entering extremely dangerous territory, but he also knew that Elvis's friendship was worth any risk he might face. Anthony Benedetto was a man in his 50s who carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted through intimidation and violence. He had built his reputation through decades of brutal enforcement of gambling debts and business contracts, and his presence in Las Vegas was both feared and respected by casino owners and entertainers alike. When Dean entered the private dining room, Benedetto was seated at a corner table with two associates who looked like they could handle any physical confrontation that might arise. The atmosphere was tense and threatening, exactly what Dean had expected from a meeting with one of the city's most dangerous crime bosses. "Mr. Martin," Benedetto said with cold politeness, "I appreciate you coming to discuss your friend's situation, Elvis Presley has created a significant problem for me, and I'm hoping you can help him understand the importance of resolving it quickly." Dean sat down across from Benedetto and spoke with the same calm confidence he displayed on stage, showing no sign of intimidation despite the obvious danger he was facing. "Mr. Benedetto, Elvis made a business decision based on his existing contracts and professional relationships. He didn't intend any disrespect to you or your interests, and I'm sure we can find a way to resolve this situation that works for everyone." Benedetto's response revealed both the depth of his anger and the seriousness of the threat Elvis was facing. "Mr. Martin, Elvis cost me $2 million in revenue when he refused to perform at the Riviera. That's not a business decision. That's a declaration of war against my organization. Elvis needs to understand that in Las Vegas, certain people expect certain courtesies, and ignoring those expectations has consequences." Dean understood that Benedetto was essentially demanding that Elvis violate his contract with the International Hotel and perform at the Riviera as compensation for the perceived insult. But Dean also knew that such a move would destroy Elvis's reputation for honoring his agreements and would set a precedent that could be used to manipulate Elvis indefinitely. Dean's response was the beginning of the most audacious negotiation in Las Vegas history. "Mr. Benedetto, I understand your position, and I respect the business principles you're defending. But I have a different proposal that might be more interesting to someone of your stature and vision." Benedetto leaned forward with obvious curiosity. Few people had ever offered him alternatives when he made demands, and he was intrigued by Dean's confidence in suggesting a different approach. "What kind of proposal?" Benedetto asked. Dean's answer would either save Elvis's life or end both their careers. "I want to challenge you to a high-stakes poker game," Dean said. "If I win, Elvis's debt to you is forgiven and you agree never to interfere with his career or contracts again. If you win, I'll personally compensate you for the $2 million you claim Elvis cost you, and I'll perform at the Riviera for free for an entire month." The room fell completely silent as Benedetto and his associates processed Dean's unprecedented offer. No one had ever challenged a mob boss to a gambling contest as a way of resolving a business dispute, and the audacity of Dean's proposal was both shocking and intriguing. Benedetto stared at Dean for a long moment, clearly trying to determine whether the offer was serious or some kind of elaborate bluff. "You're willing to risk $2 million in a month of your career on a poker game?" Benedetto asked. "I'm willing to risk everything for my friend," Dean replied, "but I'm also confident that I can win." Benedetto's response revealed both his respect for Dean's courage and his excitement about the unprecedented nature of the challenge. "Mr. Martin, in 40 years of business, no one has ever made me an offer like this. I accept your challenge, but I want to make the terms even more interesting." Benedetto proposed that the poker game take place the following evening in the most exclusive high-stakes room at the Desert Inn, with witnesses from both the entertainment industry and the organized crime community to ensure that the results were honored by all parties. Dean agreed to Benedetto's terms, understanding that he had committed himself to a confrontation that would either become legendary or destroy him completely. The news of Dean's challenge to Anthony Benedetto spread throughout Las Vegas within hours, creating excitement and anxiety among entertainers, casino owners, and organized crime figures who understood the unprecedented nature of what was about to take place. Elvis was horrified when he learned about Dean's plan and tried to convince his friend to withdraw the challenge, but Dean refused to back down. "Elvis, this is bigger than just your contract situation," Dean explained. "If we let Benedetto intimidate you into breaking your agreements, every mob figure in the country will think they can control entertainers for threats and violence. This stops here." The poker game between Dean Martin and Anthony Benedetto took place on Friday evening, August 24, 1973, in the Desert Inn's most exclusive private gaming room. The audience included Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., several casino owners, and representatives from organized crime families who had come to witness what many considered the most important gambling event in Las Vegas history. The game was 7-card stud poker with a $50,000 minimum bet and no maximum limit. Dean and Benedetto each began with $500,000 in chips, and the winner would take everything along with the resolution of Elvis's contract dispute. For 4 hours, Dean and Benedetto played with the skill and intensity of professionals, with each man winning and losing substantial amounts as the lead changed hands multiple times. The tension in the room was extraordinary, with witnesses understanding that they were watching a confrontation that would reshape the power dynamics of Las Vegas entertainment. The decisive hand came just after midnight, when Dean was dealt a full house and Benedetto had a straight flush. In normal circumstances, Benedetto's hand would win easily, but Dean had been carefully observing his opponent's behavior throughout the evening and had identified specific tells that indicated when Benedetto was bluffing versus when he had strong cards. Based on Benedetto's body language and betting pattern, Dean was convinced that the mob boss was bluffing despite his aggressive raises. Dean called Benedetto's all-in bet, risking everything on his read of his opponent's psychology. When the cards were revealed, Dean's full house defeated Benedetto's straight flush, winning the game and shocking everyone in the room who had expected the mob boss to have the superior hand. Benedetto stared at the cards for several seconds, then looked at Dean with an expression that combined respect and disbelief. "Mr. Martin, you just beat me at my own game," Benedetto said. "Elvis Presley's debt is forgiven, and I give you my word that neither he nor any other entertainer will ever be threatened by my organization again." But Benedetto's most surprising gesture came next. "Mr. Martin, you've shown more courage tonight than most men show in their entire lives. I want to offer you something that I've never offered anyone, my personal protection and the protection of my organization for as long as you perform in Las Vegas." Dean's victory over Anthony Benedetto became legendary in Las Vegas, but its real significance lay in what it accomplished for the entertainment community as a whole. Benedetto kept his word about ending organized crime intimidation of entertainers, and other mob figures followed his lead, understanding that the entertainment industry had gained a powerful protector in Dean Martin. Elvis was so grateful for Dean's courage that he dedicated his next album to his friend, and the two entertainers maintained an even closer friendship for the rest of Elvis's life. The poker game also established Dean as one of the most respected and feared figures in Las Vegas, with both entertainers and organized crime figures understanding that he was someone who would risk everything to protect his principles and his friends. Dean never publicly discussed the poker game with Benedetto, but the story became part of Las Vegas folklore and inspired countless other stories about the intersection of entertainment and organized crime in the city. Anthony Benedetto eventually became one of Dean's most reliable allies in Las Vegas, ensuring that Dean's performances received the best venues and protection while respecting the entertainer's independence and integrity. The friendship between Dean and Benedetto lasted for over 20 years, with the mob boss often saying that Dean Martin was the only man who had ever beaten him fairly and earned his complete respect in the process. When Dean Martin died in 1995, Anthony Benedetto attended the funeral despite his advanced age and declining health, telling reporters that Dean had been one of the few truly courageous men he had ever known. The story of Dean's poker challenge to save Elvis Presley became one of the most famous gambling legends in Las Vegas history, illustrating the power of friendship, courage, and the willingness to risk everything for what you believe is right. If this story of friendship, courage, and the most audacious gamble in Las Vegas history moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with anyone who needs to know that true friendship sometimes requires risks that seem impossible to take, and that the greatest victories come from protecting the people you love, no matter what the cost. Have you ever taken a huge risk to protect a friend? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more incredible stories about the moments when loyalty requires courage and friendship becomes legendary.